Alexander Gardens. Located between the Kremlin Wall and Manege Square, Alexander Gardens is one of Moscow's first urban parks. It emerged in the 1820s as part of a scheme to rebuild sections of the city destroyed in the Napoleonic War of 1812. A memorial grotto in the gardens is laid with debris of Moscow's buildings destroyed by Napoleon's troops. Following World War II, a tomb of an unknown soldier and an eternal flame were installed in Alexander Gardens. The Russian State Library, 3 to 5 Vozdrizhenka Street. The Russian State Library, known as the Lenin Library in the Soviet era, hence the name of the metro station next to it, is the world's fourth biggest library and the biggest one in Russia. It was founded in the mid-19th century and the current building was erected in the 1930s and 40s, with some additions made in the 1960s. While the original designs for the building leaned heavily towards modernism, it eventually acquired a neoclassical look. The facade is adorned with bas-reliefs of Archimedes, Charles Darwin, Alexander Pushkin and others. Legend has it that bells from several Moscow churches were melted down to make them. In front of the building stands a monument to Russian author Fyodor Dostoevsky. The Pashkov Mansion, 3 to 5 Vozdrizhenka Street, Building 1. One of Moscow's best-known classicist buildings, the Pashkov Mansion, overlooking the Kremlin, was erected in the 1780s for retired Captain Lieutenant Fyodor Pashkov. In the second half of the 18th century, the building, which is often referred to as one of Moscow's most beautiful houses, was transferred to the Rumenyatsev Museum. Today it holds some of the Russian State Library's collections and is also used for public events. The Batulin Mansion, number 12, Znamenka Street. Erected in the 1700s and rebuilt in the early 19th century, it changed hands many times, and its last owners before the Bolshevik Revolution were the Batulin family. Presently it is home to the Gnesin Music School. The Defense Ministry, 19 Znamenka Street. This building has experienced several major reconstructions. What was originally General Aparaxin's palace became the Aleksandrov orphanage in the mid-19th century and was rebuilt again to host the Defense Ministry in the 1940s. Gogol Boulevard and Monument. Gogol Boulevard is the westernmost stretch of the Boulevard Ring, the city's second centermost ring road. It used to be called Prechestensky after a nearby church before being renamed Gogol after the renowned Russian 19th century author Nikolai Gogol in 1924, the year his 115th anniversary was celebrated. The monument to Gogol was inaugurated in 1952. Arbat. Moscow's landmark street dates back to the late 15th century. In the mid-1980s it became Moscow's first pedestrian street and remains one of the must-visit places in the Russian capital. In addition to residential buildings and numerous souvenir shops and cafes, the street features the Vakhtangov Theatre. Arbat is also the place where street musicians and artists seem to be around all the time. Novy Arbat. Formerly Kalininsky Prospect, named after Mikhail Kalinin, a top communist official in the 1920s through to the 1940s, Novy Arbat is an example of a major urban development project of the Soviet era. All of the newer buildings were erected in the late 1960s as part of a major reconstruction scheme. Voyentorg, number 10, Vozdrizhenka Street. The building of the Voyentorg, or the military department store, was erected in 1913. In the mid-2000s, the original building was torn down despite preservationist protests and replaced with a new shopping and office centre, which many believe has little in common with the original Voyentorg despite some similarities. Moscow State University Building, 11 Mohoya Street. The oldest building of the Moscow State University dates back to the late 18th century. Although these days, Russia's main university is mostly symbolized by the Stalin-era skyscraper on Vorobyovy Gory, this building is still in use.